Hello. Okay, while we are waiting for everyone to join, let's figure out who'll take notes. And I don't know, Andrea, can you take notes for this meeting? I'll share the link to her committee.
Yeah, I also need to talk about the multi-account, so I don't know if I can take also the...
I don't know, Rachel, maybe you can then too, because so far I see a lot of people who talk about me.
Yeah, I'm supposed to talk about it. It's fine. I don't mind. But...
Yeah, I shared it in the chat, the link to notes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, I think there are more and more people right now, but let's just get started. And thank you so much for joining. It's DEF call number 20. And today, as usual, we'll probably start with the swarm updates. And I guess just give me a second to open the swarms list. So I guess a lot of people are not here because the link was wrong in the invitation, but yeah. I guess who can talk about sticker market and audit there? Corey, maybe? Let's start with it.
Yeah, no problem. Sticker market, the first round of the audit is done. We have a bunch of issues in a private repository with Bits that we're going through and finishing. Ricardo has made all pull requests to fix all issues, but one of them is going to be a little more complex. So I'm going through that and reviewing it. Once we feel we're done with all the changes, we'll submit it back to Bits, which should happen sometime this week. And they'll just go over it once again to make sure that what we've done is sufficient for fixing the problem that they initially said. So that should all be done relatively quickly.
Great. Okay, then do we have someone from the DApp store?
Andy's currently, I think, still out.
Andy is still on leave,
Yeah. So I guess I can take that one too. That's now currently me and Jakob had a talk with LimeWire, or no, LimeChain. Sorry, LimeWire is an old P2P client. LimeChain to discuss the state of it was in, and they have basically built everything out with Andy, and now it needs to undergo tests. We were waiting on like this kind of DApp approval backend that we needed to do. That's been implemented. So I'm going to be talking with Anna and the test team probably today or sometime this week early to start figuring out how we're going to test it to make sure it does all the things we want it to do, and get it ready for audit after that.
Cool, great, thank you. So now I see Yuri joined, so can you update us for your swarms, Yuri?
Yeah. All right. So let's see. For the teller, we've been So we're finalizing this feeless transactions with the solution using a gas relayer. We made some changes also to make the dApp more reactive. And the main thing we've been working on is this staking pool contract. I'll be talking about it more, maybe in a town hall or something, to release more details on it. And that's also related to the DAO, because it would be a way to distribute funds to a DAO that can manage that could manage the teller. And this is related also to the DAO. And look at funding. We are waiting for some feedback, but we just started to do some preparations also for the teller in terms of roadmap and security audits and that type of stuff.
Okay, cool. Thank you. So, token economics, I guess it's Corey.
Yep. Sticker market is currently being wrapped up on its write-up. That I'm hoping that blog can go out this week. We took a little bit longer on it because I wanted to explain some of the key differences in how it worked versus the ENS usernames, because the model is quite different. So yeah, that should go out. And then next, I'm hoping to get dApp Store, because that'll be closer to release and finalized, and I'll have a better understanding of how it works.
Okay. Yep. Thank you. So now the core improvements. Anna is sick today, so I'll probably take for her. So regarding the performance stuff, we are, a lot of PRs that are related to splitting the app into different modules were already merged and probably will continue work, so that this way we'll improve the cold startup time by reducing the amount of code we have to load at each startup, so we can only load, let's say, I don't know, an extensions module only when extensions are actually used and not on every startup. And then one more thing about performance is that there is, I'm slowly trying to, we have this markdown-ish parsing in our clients, and it turns out that if you have a lot of formatting in your messages, it can be very slow. And I made an experiment in replacing that with a native rendering of a native parsing of this markdown-ish syntax. And it looks like that it looks very promising so far. So for one extreme message where every character is formatted separately, and it has like around 5,000 characters. On the old version, on at least my simulations, the release build took like around 20 seconds to render the chat because it was so slow. And with this native rendering, it takes around a second or something like this. So it's way faster. So it looks like I'll continue with this, and I'll continue with this. So opening the chats even with heavy formatting won't be that of a problem anymore. And I guess one more thing that we do is we are getting closer and closer to making reproducible builds for Android. So we can submit it to F-Droid or other places where it's necessary, and sideload the application in a more secure way. And basically, Pedro is getting closer and closer. It's always like, I guess he passed the phase when he was working with like Yarn to essentially build the JavaScript and ClojureScript. And now it's on the phase where it's actually building the Android release, which is not producing reproducible results so far. So, but yeah, it's at least we are not staying on one place. We're just moving towards it. So that looks pretty good. And what else? One more thing, but I guess it's on the level between the protocol and core improvements, is that Adam prepared the first PR that uses what we have, the technology that we use in the console client, to actually use it as a backend to our status React, so we can parse protocol on the Go side. It's a first of, but this is relative, maybe a third of what's needs to be done. It's about chat management, and yeah, I think that's it for the core improvements. And I think we can have a protocol now. Oskar.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So I've been continuing to work to integrate DataSync into the status console client. There was some issues with Whisper adapter and so on. We've also been doing some initial, very basic simulations for that to sort of see the latency and bandwidth overhead. Since we don't currently have Swarm and we sort of still have mail servers to sort of deal with most offline devices, it's a bit of an issue in terms of latency and bandwidth. So the next test we want to do there is we want to expose the sort of simulation parameters we have in minimal viable DataSync, which deals with things like churn, so with the fact that a client is offline 90% of the time, and sort of this bouncing back and forth of messages, and we want to expose those tests in the status console client, because that way we can see how things actually improve given our sort of current mail server setup when it comes to latency and bandwidth. We also sort of bring some final touches on the minimal viable DataSync paper spec kind of thing to make sure it's in a solid draft mode. What else on DataSync? The general stuff going on status console client and topic partition and so on. We've been working with for DataSync, right? So we also have sort of some amendment suggestions of the minimal viable version, which is about using Swarm as a remote log. So you sort of replicate on top of that and use feeds and so on. That, however, has a dependency on actually having a Swarm light client, which is something that we started collaborating with the Swarm team. Lewis and I have been spending the last few weeks sort of speaking out the sort of requirements and the path towards that. So we want to have solid specifications for PSS and for light mode, and then also for the BSS chunk store protocol kind of thing. So we have gotten pretty far in terms of the planning of roughly the kind of pieces that have to be done and so on. And then it's going to be a priority for the protocol team for July, August, and September to actually sort of implement this kind of Swarm adaptive nodes and so on. And I think that's it. We're also working on some proposals for DevCon as well. Yeah. We're also working on. We're gonna this week. We're gonna sort of revisit actually having some kind of roughly solid draft of our current specifications, because we kind of left them hanging after a bit. So we want to sort of document our current protocol as best as we can. And this should sort of roughly reflect version 1. So it's something stable that we can point to and client implementations can sort of rely on. That's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you. And janitors right now.
Yeah, I can give a quick update. Or Rachel, do you want to give an update? Are you there?
I don't really actually know what our update is.
Oh, okay. I'll give an update. Basically, so at the moment we're trying to rejigger the V1 launch scope, just purely because there's so much we need to do, and I think the timelines for us to hit end of quarter is probably not realistic. So that's the current priority, is to find out what a realistic deadline is. Multi-account work is pretty much the beast that's not holding up everything else, but it's probably work that should be done first before we tackle the rest. So multi-account is a priority to complete, and then we can finish off the rest of the features and bugs for V1. I think there was also an email that went out regarding putting in effort for the amount of work needed. That will also help timelines. So if we know how much work a given task is, then it makes it much easier for us to estimate and know exactly like what should be in and out of scope based on the amount of time it takes to finish everything. I think that's pretty much it.
Well, I actually had one question about this priority, and if the multi-account right now, is it a priority number one, or like is on pair with the performance? So let's say if there are some resource conflicts, which way it should go? Like,
I mean, it depends on who. Right now, multi-account, both of them need to get completed. So I would say that those are the two. The main reason why multi-account probably should get completed first is because it's blocking a lot of other features, for example, tribute to talk, and basically anything else that requires anything account related is blocked on multi-account work. So I would say multi-account is probably slightly more important, but they both need to get done. So yeah.
Cool.
It's kind of. I think it's important because it's if we do this after we implement the, like, for example, tribute to talk, we will have all this migration work that will probably cost a lot of gas. So it's important to do before, so the users are already signing into whatever is the application we are using into these separated accounts.
Okay. So now let's switch to the teams. And I think for the core team, we pretty much covered everything. So core UI team, I think. Andrey?
Yeah.
Or maybe Rachel. Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
We can hear you, Andrey.
Yeah, so should I talk about the core UI team or sorry?
Yeah. If you want to give the core UI update first.
Oh, okay. Okay, so for multi accounts, I've filed the pull request for accounts explorer screen and the individual account screen. So we have the UI. It works for let's say old accounts, so it doesn't support the multi accounts yet. So next step is implementing the multi account support. So generating account or import watch only accounts. Also, we have a pull request for first step for onboarding. So we have the first screens for onboarding, and currently we are working on PIN code, and yes, so work in progress on the PIN code. Vitaly is working, and for INS names, we also, I think we are. It's mostly testing part is mostly finished, so we are ready to merge the first part of ENS name, and it's for ENS name registration and verification. And currently we are working on showing ENS name in chats. And I don't know about regarding multi accounts. I don't know. Should we speak now or?
I think we'll discuss it later.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
Okay. So now I guess it's a key card.
Yeah. So for keycard, with regards to the integration within Status app in the past 2 weeks, Dimitri is the one in charge of that, and he was out, so not much progress there. He's back tomorrow. On the ledger side, Michele managed to have our keycard applet to run on the NanoX. So it's a cool achievement. And the other thing I wanted to mention, yeah, we plan to have this week some discussions with make a DAO and OmiceGo to progress on the payment networks for point of sales to be used with keycard, and we want to do this together with the Teller team, since they are also working on that. And that's it for keycard. The rest is about multi-account, and I guess we'll discuss it after the Swarm roundtable.
Yeah, but I think we're done. Is there anyone who I forgot to mention in Swarm or team? Probably
Yeah,
not.
I think that we can mention about the progress in sticker market smart contracts. There is a lot being worked on, and that's the main reason I'm not having much updates on the topic democracy, because I'm this kind of priority, the sticker market, and we kind of, for example, we did a lot of changes in the architecture recently, and to make it a better upgradability. And I think that it's now with the auditing of Trail of Bits, and yeah, now it's just wait for them to approve these changes, and then we have this new smart contract for the sticker market that is properly audited and have all the proper architecture, a proper spec. Yeah, that's it. Oh, and then regarding topic democracy, I'm also working on it. So I'm doing progress on how the ABI, because when you create a proposal, you don't want the user to enter data and stuff. You want like the proper ABI of the smart contract they are trying to change a parameter. And I'm doing this on top of the multi-sig dApp. So these changes are going to first on the multi-sig dApp. That is also useful for a lot of things we do in Status.
All right, great. So yeah, let's then move to multi-account work. And yeah, so I guess Rachel had some idea on how to structure this.
Yeah, I think Louis will probably kick off with a summary of what's been decided and worked on so far.
Yeah, I don't know if it's easy to share a screen, but maybe not. And I just pasted a link if you want to follow up with the summary of the. Yeah, cool. I see something.
Now we should be able to share the screen.
Okay, let me try. So I've never done that. So where is it? Plus.
It's a green share thing.
Okay, got it. Yeah, I'm almost there. Almost there. Can you see a KMD document?
Yeah, we can see it.
Can you see it moving when I do that?
Yep.
Cool. Okay, so yeah. So a summary of the situation with regards to multi-account, since we had several discussions in the past 2 weeks about that. First, I just wanted to re-give once the context for everyone, why we're doing that. Yeah, today in beta, within the status, we only have one key pair, basically. So it's the BIP44 standard one, M/446000. We use it for Whisper, and we use it in wallet type of functions to send and receive funds. Okay, so that's pretty simple. And in the V1, what's different is that we're going to separate the key pair, this key pair that we use to send and receive fund, the BIP44 index 01, from the key pair used for messaging, which we call the Whisper key. And for the Whisper key, we're going to use M/44/60/1581/0/0. And why? What is the fundamental reason why we do that? is because in this V1, we want to allow the use of key card with status. That's really the fundamental reason. If we had not separated key pairs, then each time you send a message, we would have to tap the card to the phone, which would be a pretty bad experience. So that's the fundamental reason. And the other reason is that we want to lay the groundwork to have a more flexible way to manage keys within status. We see it's not easy, it's raising a lot of questions, but it's better to have all this work done now than later on once V1 will be launched. And the other thing we want to have in V1, on top of this separation of key pair, is we want the user to be able to add more accounts so that he can manage all these assets the way he sees fit. So yeah, so this is really what we are doing now. What's the status? We can see things separated in two things. First, there is somehow the core of multi-account, which is how it impacts the account view, an explorer view, and the way to add accounts. The explorer view, it's a new layer that we don't have now in status, which sits on top of the account level, that shows the list of all these accounts and which gives a summary of all these accounts. Typically, what are the assets? What is the sum of all assets? The sum of the value of these assets and the main assets there. So that's a new thing for status app. We need an updated account view. And we need to add accounts to the Explorer. So that's really the core new things we are adding to the app. The other thing, and I'll come to that, are what are the impacts of having several key pairs now in the app, and they can be on several stuff. But just to finish on that, what we're trying to do is we're trying to progress as sequentially as possible, both in the design and the implementation. So from main priority to lowest priority, so we need this Explorer view, we need an updated account view, we need a way to add account very simply, and the most simplest form of adding an account is without the user having to input any type of derivation path or private key or public key. Just the user is creating a new account on the which will sit on the next index available on the BIP44 path. Then we need to add watch addresses. We need to add account from private keys. And then we need to add accounts from seed, any seed, either a different seed from the status one or the same that the user is currently using, and the derivation path. So where we at with regards to this, design is pretty well advanced up to the add account from a private key. So so the 5 first points here, and we'll work. I mean, our focus is to get into the very details of all this stuff to have them implemented, and then we'll also add account from a seed and derivation, which is a more advanced use case. From an implementation standpoint, Andrea just said that he has already started to work on Explorer view and account view and submitted a PR last week. So that's the current situation with this core multi-account work. But now, interestingly, and this is something we spent a lot of time discussing, is really checking all the different impacts that now that we have several key pairs within status, everywhere we use a key pair to make sure which is the key pair we use. So we have firmed up a key principle, which is that the whisper key pair is going to be used only for messaging. Which means that our main account which is the BIP44 one with index 0, is going to be used for all transactions. So that's a key principle that guides all our decision making currently. So the current agreements we have, and that we will actually, we want to submit that also to Jared with out here, because we want to have some gating process to have all these choices confirmed. But the team is pretty much aligned on a couple of things. First, transaction from chat or profile view, when A is going to send assets to B, then both on A and B side, we're going to use the main account of A and B. We're not going to use a Whisper address coming from the Whisper key on any side. And to do that, B must add A to his contacts, so that B provides to A his main account address. So that's a first very important thing. Then we're going to use the main account to sign all DApp transactions, to register for the ENS name, and also to receive tributes in Tribute to Talk. So this has impacts, for instance, on Tribute to Talk. This has impacts in Tribute to Talk that have been taken into account on the things that needs to be worked on in Tribute to Talk. Also, we've settled on the fact that we're not going to provide flexibility to the user to change the main account. I mean, the one that's used for all those stuff. For this V1, we make things simple. It's the main account with the index 0. I mean, the one that the user got at start, that's going to be used for all that, and we're not going to provide to the user possibility to change that. Also, we want to make things simple. We don't want the user to be able to remove accounts that is added to his list. We had some discussion about that on Thursday. We also discussed the case where the user would get some assets on his Whisper, the new Whisper address coming from its key. So if you see what I'm highlighting, if someone is sending me assets there, we had several discussions to see, hey, what are we going to do there? And our conclusion is also to make that very simple. We believe this is never going to happen, or very, very rarely. And for this V1, we don't want to scan things in the background to see if funds are coming there. And then if things are coming there, show this in the list of accounts. We're going to keep things simple. And we're never going to show a new account using this address in the list of accounts, and that is for V1. And also, and so when a user is adding new accounts, to send funds from there is going to use the wallet part of the app, basically. So this is what we're in agreement with. What's still in discussion is the migration, meaning migration from our current beta app to the V1, because the user, the case is if someone is using the beta app and wants to chat with someone that used the new app because they've been in contact in the past, the person with the new app has got a new Whisper key. So this person with the new app is going to need to listen to Whisper messaging incoming on the Whisper key from the old path, and then answer either from the old or the new Whisper key. So there's discussion about this migration, and we're going to come back to that. And the other big subject is about all those stuff that we still have to do before V1. Finishing the implementation of the core part of multi-account, and all the impacts like on Tribute to Talk, and all the side thing. We need this in V1, and so there's a V1 prioritization effort led by Rachel to see what's the planning for that. So that's what the main things that we're discussing. Now, well, maybe there are some questions about that, but the two other things we want to discuss is the migration. I think Esther wanted to give an update, and also the Go side effort for this. Andrea wanted to give an update on this Go work.
I have a question about this. I see that you are explaining the relationship between the Whisper key and the wallet account, and in the relationship between ENS usernames, that is a DApp from status. But it's not clear for me how what is the relationship with other dApps, because the status, it has this DApp browser, and so the user would be able to select what is the account, or it will be generated one account per DApp, or what?
For the ENS, I'll let Rachel comment, but really for dApps from the browser, because for ENS now it's a native development. For dApps from the browser at this stage in V1, we really want to make things simple and use always use this key here. The main key for dApps.
Okay, so it's for this first version would be just one key, that would be the wallet key that would be used on dApps. Okay.
Yeah, and then probably in future iteration, we could have a step approach. Maybe in the first step, we could define a custom main account. If the user wants to change the key that's used for all this stuff, he could customize his main account. And even further, further down the path, we'll come back to these ideas of having a unique dApp keys and so on, but that's not for now, for sure. Does that make sense? Or that answer your question?
Yes, exactly. It was just to be really clear if that's exactly.
Okay.
So yeah, I was going to touch on a couple of points related to the migration strategy or potential migration strategy, but maybe Andrea wants to go first to talk about the changes to status Go.
Yeah, sure. So there are mainly three things that we are going to change. So the first thing is that we're moving to use RPC methods also for accounts, so that it will be easier for Status React to interact with this new API without changing and adding more native code for each platform. And then one big thing that we're changing in Go is that instead of creating a new key creating a new master key deriving the one that we want to save and save it. So removing it basically quickly from memory. We are going to keep it in memory for more time, because we want to allow Status React to basically create a new master key and then derive from different paths, different addresses, so that the user can check the address and check the balances and choose the one that they want to use. And then Status React can say, okay, I want to save this set of keys, and then remove the master key from memory. And the last thing is that, so all the keys now are saved in key store files, which are like the default for Geth, because we are wrapping it in Go. And we extended the format of this file to have a new field. So the default one has a key field where the private key is, and we added, so in the past, so this was always there, extended key, which is actually not the extended key of the same key, but it's like the next key. Because in the past we wanted to use the index one to derive sub-accounts. So first of all, we want to use the parent key of the BIP44 first address to derive new keys, so that we can have like the normal standard list of addresses that you can get from any BIP44 compatible wallet. So for example, in MetaMask. And then, so we want to save this, and actually we want to save the parent in a different key store file, so that Status React knows that every time one key is saved, it has an extended key, and from that one can ask like to load it, unlock it, and derive other child keys. So this allows in the next steps to basically do everything we can do for importing keys and deriving any custom path and everything. So these are the main changes, and there's an issue in GitHub. Maybe I think I already linked it. So if you have other questions, or if you want to contribute or discuss about it, feel free to add more comments there. Or if you have questions now, feel free to ask.
So it would be, if this first version would be one wallet key and one Whisper key, would be able to have multiple wallet keys, and then I can select in the status.
Yeah. So the API is already. It will allow to derive any key. And I think in the first release, we want to save by default the BIP44 first key and then the parent, so that you can already derive the next one, and the next one, the full list of these, without introducing again the mnemonic phrase. And then if you want to derive from the same HD wallet, so the same tree, a complete different path, you need to introduce again to put again your mnemonic, so that we regenerate the master key, and then you decide the derivation path.
There's a diagram that sums this up on Miro. I can send the link, but summarize not from the Go part, but more from a user standpoint, what the user will be able to do in terms of adding new accounts. So just like Andrea said, adding an account on the BIP44 path by just increasing the index. We want also to have a possibility to add any private key, key pair, so outside of the tree, either from a key store JSON file or from a raw private key. Adding watch address, but here there's nothing involved in Go nor any private key. And then the possibility to input a seed phrase and then choose a derivation path. This diagram can help you understand the full picture.
Okay, should we move on to migration?
There's no other question about the Go side of things?
One small one is there anything like integration with the native keychain client to do that?
No.
Okay, so so saving the keys in the more secure storage, you mean?
Yep.
I don't know. We never planned. We never put this task in the list of things to do in the multi accounts, but we can talk about it. I also remember there's a document you and Corey compiled about it. We can maybe, continue the discussion and see. I don't know exactly how long it can be. So we can, how long it could take. So I don't know if it fits in the timelines that we have now, or if you want, or if it's a priority. But for now, we never discussed about it.
Maybe
follow-up call in terms of figuring out how much work that would actually be to just move it over to, or to check for secure storage, move it there, and if not,
Yeah.
do it now. So let's just plan a follow-up call for that to see how much work that is.
Yeah, sure. That makes sense.
So speaking on security storage, that remembers me of keycard, and maybe it's too early to talk about integration in keycard on this multi-account, but seems like if you tap the card, then it would allow the wallet, but the chat you don't need the key. I think
that's currently done, Ricardo. This has been all built around being able to work with keycard. So the chat key will always live inside the application on the device, but anytime you want to use a wallet, you need to tap if you have keycard.
Yeah, makes sense. Thank
you. And Corey, you had some remarks. You wanted to discuss the audit part, impact on multi-account and Go. Do you want to do that now, or?
How much time do we have? Are we low on time? I'm low on battery. Give me 1 second.
Did he say he's low on battery?
Yeah, I had to plug my laptop.
Sorry, okay.
Yeah, so in the effort to try and figure out scope with Trilobits, I know that at some point, my current goal is to start with status go and have them audit status go in some way, shape, or form, which is to be determined. And in the process of that, we'll be able to do continue working in status react a little bit. When that's finished, they'll work to status react and then to work to how we build it into mobile binaries. But I don't want to audit something that's going to change drastically a month after we release, because there's a lot of current endeavors that we're pushing off till after V1. But if it's going to change drastically a core part of the app, what's the point of auditing it? And so I would like to go, not necessarily now, because there's not a lot of time, but schedule a call where I can we can find a way to flag different parts of status go, or separate them into go modules in such a way that if they're not going to be touched, then we can audit them appropriately. Like for instance, once multi-account is done, we should be able to figure out how we store, use, and maintain keys, and isolate that out in such a way that if it's ever, like, it shouldn't be touched. Because status go will be touched, so that means that like the hashes will change of whatever gets built, so on and so forth. But parts of it won't be, which means that the audit will still be valid for those parts. So what I need to do is figure out, one, what parts can I focus Trilobits on so that the audit isn't obsolete after a month, and then two, how do we flag the rest of the system so that if that is touched, someone's notified, particularly me, that it's changing, and I can evaluate whether or not it's obsoleting the audit. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it makes total sense, because otherwise we won't be able to release an update until without the second audit, and it would be
yeah. So like there needs to be some way in which we can isolate these things appropriately, and then we know what we've had audited and what it means to make it obsolete. Now I'm not suggesting we go through this now, but now would be a good time to figure out who should be on that call. I would imagine most of the Go team. Igor, you're going to be gone soon, so we should probably do that relatively quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Adam, Andrea, me.
Yeah, because essentially I think there are two things that are changing status go the most right now is protocol and multi-account. So.
Yeah, but I mean, like that can't change after an audit.
Yeah.
or at least most of it can't change. The core parts of it, the secure, like the high risk parts of that can't change, especially with like the way we do things cryptographically, at least at a base layer can't change.
Yeah, so we want to isolate on the protocol side. We want to isolate things like data sync versus like double ratchet and these types of things. We want to make sure that double ratchet stuff, we don't mess around and refactor that if we do things like topic ratcheting or data sync stuff. So we keep the main invariants and that sort of isolated in a module, ideally.
Yeah, and I guess protocol is anyway would be a bit, if it's layered more or less, it's a bit less of a, it touches less core things than multi-account, which touches the key store, which is the core thing, I guess, that we need to protect. So that's
like, I don't mind expanding what keys we store, as long as we don't change how we store them, right?
Yeah.
So that's not going to make anything obsolete. So like multi-account can expand as long as the base of multi-account stays the same in terms of how we maintain, store, and use keys.
So is the Go Ethereum management key reused, or is totally rewritten for status?
Right now we reuse it, but there is no point in not store key, let's say, in the keychain, which is by definition more protected than just store them somewhere on the SD
But an encrypted file in available memory is very much less secure than using any available key store or keychain in a device, a mobile device.
Yeah, and Go Ethereum was built with desktop in mind, and desktops usually don't have keychains. Then yeah, so it just stores stuff encrypted on your disk, which works, but on a mobile, it's better practice to use.
Maybe it would be interesting to, instead of like making this change in status Go, but making it in get. So like it's harder to have some critical changes. My idea would be to make this implementation of, because they have a build for Android in Get. So maybe that build for Android, for example, would implement the key store using these features from Android if they are available.
That would require for them to move to Go Mobile first. And that's, I mean, it's a good thing to do, but I don't know how much time will it take. Yeah, we should upstream it for sure, but because we had to migrate to Go Mobile instead of whatever. We used to use the same build system that Geth was using to build mobile builds, and it wasn't suited to really integrate with it only integrates from Geth to the system. And you can't do anything from system to Geth in that way, how they do this right now. And Go Mobile makes it two-way, so we can inject keychain into Geth right now in our build. But yeah, we should do that, but I don't think we should do this before audit and before V1 and stuff like this. But in general, it's good.
Maybe we can pull requests later for Geth. First we do in status Go, that is our priority, and then we pull requests to them.
Okay, in the interest of time and everyone's time here, why don't we schedule a quick call, or not a quick call, but a call for this after sometime in the very near future. So far we have me, Oskar, Adam, Igor, and Andrea. Ricardo, would you like to join us?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, I'll send out an invite or an email to schedule this out after this call.
Great. So let's talk migration then.
Yeah, so back to the multi-account work. So migration strategy is dealing primarily with backwards compatibility for Whisper and for chat. Once I upgrade to a multi-account build, I will have a brand new Whisper ID to be used in chat. And therefore, unless we create support for backwards compatibility, my old contacts won't be able to find me. So we discussed a few different options for how we could offer backwards compatibility, which I will link. It's in this doc. And And it seems that the most viable option, if we want to support such a thing, would be for a user on multi-account to continue listening to their old Whisper ID, but they would then respond from their new Whisper ID to anybody who messages them from an older build. Whether or not we should actually support this is still a question mark. Jakob and Adam have helped me to pull some data on the number of unique peer IDs that we have interacting with on Whisper. And it looks like we've had just under like 2,000 unique peers online over the past 3 months. So currently I'm working on breaking down what the scope of work would look like if we built this backwards compatibility in order to kind of cost out the development time and decide whether that's worth it when moving from a beta build to a V1. So we've also done a little bit of a survey of the community that Hester has worked on to see what people's sentiment is towards breaking change, and it's pretty positive so far. People seem to be okay with it. But if anybody has strong opinions on that, then let's continue a conversation about it offline. You can ping in status core about it if you want to talk about it. There's one other sub point that we discussed very briefly in status, and I want to make sure on this call that nobody has pushback on. And that's the idea of clearing users' database when they upgrade to multi-account. So therefore, basically, like a user on multi-account would lose all of their messages and contacts as well. And it sounded like we had support for that in status core last week, but Andrey, could you explain that a little better?
Yeah, so currently we have in Status React from its first version, we have 23 schemes for base and 46 schemes for account, and for most of them we have migration, and if we will have version 1, maybe it could be we could discuss if we need this legacy in release, and maybe it's, I don't know, it's worth it to start schemes from scratch. But in this case, yes, we need to clear DB, and also we have 2 things more. First one is we move our messages to status Go, so we need to somehow migrate these messages from Realm to status Go, and also yes, multi-account support. We need somehow migrate old accounts to multi-account support. So maybe we could consider this like to clear the DB and start it from scratch.
So I just want to go back to the backwards compatibility stuff. I feel like this is a good place to have a discussion. I would have pushback against that. I'm trying to understand, because we had this discussion a few times on backwards compatibility in general, and why it's useful in terms of sort of cursiveness, creating a culture around it, sort of generally being good user experience and so on. I'm trying to understand like what is stopping us from having some form of backwards compatibility. Like, what's the main blocker that people see?
The ROI doesn't seem to be high enough, other than in terms of principles. Like, I understand like the ethos around supporting backwards compatibility, but like going from beta to V1 when you're under 2K users and it's going to cost, I'm not quite sure how long it would take, but I understand that it would be a high effort thing to build.
So I think we should quantify that a bit more in detail, like what that work would be like, because it's not just like it's a principle thing. It's a cultural thing. It's about us learning how to do it, and it's also user experience thing. If someone recovers an account or whatever, the fact that things should just work. Like otherwise, I think we're just setting up ourselves up for always having this thing where we keep breaking compatibility. And we already had this. We almost did a thing with top integration. Didn't do the thing with top integration. negotiation, and now we're doing it. So I don't see why we wouldn't have this decision wouldn't be the same in this case. I don't see how it's different.
One thing that I wanted to add is that listening to the old Whisper ID, as we probably discussed it before, but from the security standpoint, then it defeats the purpose of multi-account. Because to listen to the old Whisper ID, you still need the old key in memory. And if you use keycard, for instance, well, you need to tap every time to decrypt every message, which is inconvenient, or you have the key in two places at once. So it's from that standpoint, like this migration strategy, yeah, I kind of not sure how good is it. What we also thought about is that we can always, I don't know, it's also a bad probably idea, but to have like legacy accounts for those who and keep the old code running.
Yes.
If you have like you migrated, you have the legacy account, you mark it as like it's unsafe from the privacy perspective because we sure know that it's unsafe from the privacy perspective. Please migrate manually to the new one. I mean, that's kind of a half.
Yeah,
solution.
but I mean, no, but that's a good solution, because then it's about consent, right? It's about giving the user the option to do that, and then people can choose what they want, as opposed to us forcing, hey, you gotta switch your account kind of thing. Because that's the
but
kind
we
of
don't
like
have users
app.
yet. We have test users.
No, but we already have had this discussion kind of thing, and I think the same argument that Jacek was bringing up last time still applies. That we sort of, it's about what are we doing here? Are we sort of creating this product that we can just change nilly-willy, or to create something sort of stable and a culture and something stable and open sort of base that people can sort of interact with, right? And giving users the option, at least we're leaving the power in their hands, and they can choose whether they want to upgrade or not. And we can obviously encourage people to upgrade, but I really don't see why we would just throw that away, especially when this is a great learning opportunity for us and learning how to do these things, because it's not going to come up several times over the next few years.
Well, because it's expensive, and also because those aren't users; those are beta users.
Yeah, I agree.
So why are beta users worse than the normal users? I don't understand.
Because they're not worse. They are aware that they're using beta software that can lose backwards compatibility. That's what happens when you are in beta, and that's why you have beta.
Yeah, people expect change out of beta. It's a different context. And I also don't think we're not doing anything damaging to users. We're actually
they can always use the old piece of software to get back whatever they had, whatever resources they had there, right? They can always use the older version of the application.
So if I have an account and I haven't used it in a long time, and then what will the path look like? If let's say I'm a regular firm user, but I don't use status because it's not good enough, and then we release version 1, and then when I recover my account where I have my crypto keys and whatnot, exactly what does the path look like? Because they have to keep in mind, there's lots of people in the Ethereum community who have accounts and status. They just don't use the app regularly.
I think that we need to see what is the app that we are migrating. If you are the case, the ENS usernames, that requires a transaction to make the migration. It's basically setting the new Whisper key, and that involves the gas cost. But for other things that doesn't require a transaction, then it would be easier.
I just mean by default. I just have my backup. I've written down my status of seed phrase, and then I install the app 6 months online, whatever, and then I enter my seed phrase. What happens precisely?
Oskar, we still need to detail what, if depending on the decision we take on the kind of migration we would look for, we still have to work on how do we communicate that best to users. And I agree, it should ideally be some sort of opt-in, so it's not a forceful hey, we've upgraded you. Yeah, I think it needs to be detailed more. I agree to that.
So the case that
you can also solve the issue with let's say seed phrase by making this seed phrase versions and make them still compatible, but you can add some status specific word in front of it, for instance. And if it's there, then it's a new account. If it's not there, that's an old account, and you recover the old one, and you still show the annoying message that, oh, well, you're using the old account, make sure that your private data, or it's not private data, but your transaction might leak from your Whisper ID and stuff like that. So and we should I'm still not exactly convinced how expensive that is. We should probably try to estimate that first, because just keeping the old code running and not breaking it, is it that much more expensive than breaking it?
It's also about, just to add to that, because one factor is cost of development, another is speed of development. And if I'm listening to the ambassadors that are closest to our community, just getting a reliable app out there is more important to them than whether or not we break compatibility. And on that topic, one thing we haven't discussed is actually what do you lose at the moment when you lose compatibility, especially in the case where you don't use status that often. Either others have already upgraded and you've lost their contact information anyway, or you don't have any chats to recover in the first place. So maybe I'm not fully understanding the implications there, but it seems to me that whenever I recover my account now, my assets are still there. And let's say that the chats I had, if I haven't used status in a while, they were not relevant or non-existent anyway.
Yeah,
but that's kind of to me it sounds like, oh, we are bad at recovering our old accounts, so let's not get better than just use the reason that we are bad for just taking a trapdoor and
I see what you mean, but there are different discussions, and what I would want to focus on is the discussion at this point in time with the recovery and the information that we support now, rather than the principle of even though I agree to obviously we don't want to continue doing this in the future, but I would want to base our decision on where we are in the moment. And that is that when you recover, basically you don't have a lot of information, and that is what will happen if we introduce this in September. So I'm pretty neutral on whether we maintain compatibility or we move away from it for whatever we do in September, but I would want to focus on any factors that influence the decision now and not 1 or 2 years from now.
I mean, what you lose is if, let's say, I have you in my contact list and you are not using status often, then at some point where you upgrade, you won't receive my messages anymore. But so I still will have your old account and in my contact list, and that would be confusing for me, not for the ones who upgraded, but for people around it, more or less. So and then you'll need to go through everyone and say, oh, that's my new address, that's my new account.
Mm-hmm. Hopefully having an easy name would solve some of this.
But now we are mixing what we will have and what we have right now.
Well, it sounds like, so anyway, it sounds like the proposal that we had in the doc I shared is not the best option for migration anyway. The option that you proposed, Igor, sounds better. So maybe what we can do is, I don't know who should be involved in that conversation, but definitely you can help us spec out that work a little bit so we can look at the time estimate, because again, we're trying to be conservative in our development time. But it just, to me, when the main thing is the context. When you're upgrading from beta, it's expected that there could be significant changes. And again, we've surveyed the community and we've had some response that indicates that the community would not be upset by this kind of breaking change at this point in development. I don't think that means that we're going to have in the future. It doesn't. It's contextual.
So personally, in terms of multi-country priorities I would rather see that the key structures that's sort of spec'd out and so on. But then instead of spending a lot of time on fixing up things like tributor talk and so on, making sure there's a smooth upgrade path. Because if you don't break things, if you leave things running and then you ensure that there's a path to move to something better, then you don't need to change all the things. You just need to have this new sort of structure, and then you can sort of slowly move things, and you can nudge people sort of, move your tributor talk to this other thing or whatever, or stop listening to this Whisper topic because you have synced devices and so on. I'm not sure to what extent that's always doable, but that would be my preference, as opposed to changing stuff just taking something and then adding to it and then finding a smooth upgrade path.
So you would
That's,
work
to
on
me, more useful.
having a migration strategy for our beta users is more important than having Tribute to Talk and sticker market.
Not changing things. Like I've had this discussion a lot of times, and it often comes back to this, that if you introduce new behavior, ideally it shouldn't change things. It's something you're adding stuff, you're accreting stuff to the largest extent possible, and then you can find a path for sort of slowly moving to other things. And that, I mean, I think it's a general principle, and it's not just it's a general code architecture principle. How do you think about code, and what do you think about changes?
I think what Rachel's trying to say here, and sorry for trying to interpret, but if we are to maintain compatibility, then we would need to make a trade-off. Is this many months or weeks of work versus this feature? And I think that's pretty much what it comes down to. Right? Are we happy to delay by 6 weeks in order to maintain backwards compatibility? Right. And that's all. And until we know what that time frame looks like, I don't think that there's all that, like, it's a lot of speculation right now from what I hear in this discussion.
Yeah.
I would argue that I like Oskar's approach, but only after V1. If we ever have a chance to break compatibility and start fresh with this is the base in which we do these things, it's going to be now, when we're in the appropriate form of an application where you can do that and users expect it. Because at the end of the day, I'm going to write a Discuss post that outlines how little users we actually have based on the metrics we can take. It's not a lot of people. It's mostly just us and our ambassadors. We have a lot of one second. We have a lot of app downloads. A lot of people have the application. And so when we release V1, you're right, they're going to come to a new application. But there's no other chance in the future where we're going to be able to say, we're starting fresh. This is the way we wanted to build the app in the first place. Welcome to status, versus the principle you're trying to uphold now.
So in general, I agree with that reasoning. I think there's at least two things missing from that. So one is the fact that we're talking about it as if after V1 things will change. And I think we haven't really shown enough evidence that would be the case. For example, we talk about ENS usernames, but that also plays into sort of things like universal login and so on. And like, I think if we don't, a lot of it is about sort of changing the culture and us learning how to do these things. And this is in some form sort of the best time to learn this, because after V1, the stakes will be higher as well. There's a perfect opportunity for us to sort of practice and learn how to do these upgrade paths and learn the kind of mistakes, like how to deal with these types of things, because it's just going to get harder. So it's as much a cultural thing. And I think it's much easier to see the side effects that are negative, because they're obviously a pain in the ass to maintain backwards compatibility, and it takes more development time. It's just easier to start from scratch all the time. But the positive side effects are less visible, and they are in terms of how we treat sort of the sort of protocols and specifications that we create, and sort of taking that seriously in terms of not breaking stuff all the time, as well as sort of the skill set that we develop, and sort of the respect for certain types of design shows and so on. But in general, I agree that, yeah, sure, version 1 is a perfect time to have a clean break, but I see no evidence that anything would be different in terms of after V1.
Yeah, and then the same
culturally and technically in terms of our sophistication of thinking about these problems. I've seen, because right now in this proposal, for example, I don't even see that being entertained. And this was a big thing when we talked about topic negotiation, where it was like, oh, we can't do it because it's with broadcast, blah, blah. And then we just spent a week thinking about it, and Andrea came up with this great proposal that actually solves it. So it's about putting serious effort into it, and then actually weighing the trade-offs and having some sophistication about it and how we approach these things.
Yeah, and I actually agree, and I see it looks like, I mean, I interpret the others people saying and words, but it looks like I see the opposite, like, because the rules of keeping something backward compatible is to expand and not modify, and we don't like this proposal in general looks like it's a modification of behavior instead of expansion of behavior, right? And backward compatibility is like hard and pain in the ass, but only until you have to roll back a build of some financial system live with some database that has a user's money, and then you know why you did it. So it's like, But yeah, I think that the mindset should be like, you should expand stuff and not change behavior, even if it means that you just need to leave the old code alone, maybe isolate it and leave it alone, right? And just add the second path and add an option there, here and there. And it's that's kind of philosophy behind how you may say. Well, of course, you can always tell that it's easy for me to say because I'll be on leave soon, but yeah, that's kind of my thought. Again, it might be that this will actually take long. Let's just try to at least estimate it, right? So how do we keep backward compatibility, and at least how hard would it be to do this? And I can assist it.
Okay, we can work together on that then.
Okay, so is there anything else? Any more thoughts on?
One option for dealing with the version 1 kind of thing is the fact that if you do this, if we have this sort of technical sophistication to think in terms of accretion as opposed to changing things, then we can spec out what that looks like. And then we might notice that supporting this type of legacy operation is really, really bad for privacy reasons or whatever. And then we can make, if that sort of, it's clear what the exact trade-off is and we know how to do it, then we can make a choice, because we have two options. We can either maintain this, and then it's more of an informed choice as opposed to sort of development time and so on, but it's more about here's the actual technical trade-off, and that's the arena where you're making a decision. And at that point, I would at least personally feel more confident that we have learned how to deal with these things, and we're making an informed decision that for version 1, we're going to remove these legacy things, and it's for these specific technical reasons. So it's an actual technical argument.
I could agree with that.
Cool. So yeah, Corey, I've seen you edit some topic, but did we discuss it already?
Yeah, we discussed it.
Okay.
That's the call. That's the follow-up call we're gonna have.
Great. So yeah, if that's it, then yeah, thank you so much for joining the core dev calls, and yeah, special thanks to Rachel for keeping the notes. And yeah, see you in 2 weeks.
Guys.
Thanks.
Have a good day, guys.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.